the story of how we got up the mountain is usually going to be a better story than the one of how we came down again at the end. The story of struggle, of endeavour, of physical effort, of false summits, of unexpected views, and of that final vista of reaching the summit and being on top of the world. That's usually the story we'll want to tell, not the stumbling walk back down again when we're exhausted. And if you're not a mountain climber or a hill walker, maybe the same would apply to other aspects in your life. The story of struggle and ascent to the summit is usually going to be a better story than the one where we make the journey back into the muddle and ordinariness of our lives. Well, Jesus often led his disciples up the Mount of Olives. We know that from the Gospels, from various stories that are told when Jesus is actually there. And a little later in Luke, from the story that we read today, Luke actually tells us that it was Jesus' custom to take his disciples up there. And one imagines pilgrimage by pilgrimage as they visit Jerusalem and as they stay in Bethany, not so far away from the Mount of Olives as their retreat, their home from home. It would be part of their custom to go up the Mount of Olives. And I am quite sure that for Jesus and for his disciples, that journey up would have been one loaded with spiritual significance. Because the Mount of Olives is, of course, for the people of Israel, a deeply symbolic place. Geographically, of course, to the east of the city, it's a ridge that gives a splendid view out over the city, a great vantage point. But more than that, in the prophecies of Zechariah, the Mount of Olives is the place visited by God himself when God comes to save his people from the nations. God stands there on the Mount of Olives in chapter 14, and the hill splits in two and a valley opens up, which becomes a channel of escape for the threatened people of Jerusalem. And it's a foretaste of God's saving action for his people. And so the journey up the Mount of Olives is laden with that sense of hope and prayer and expectation that God will come in victory to save his people. And of course, from Zechariah's time through to today, it's become a place of significance for burial for many people, for many Jews in particular, to be buried at that place of significance, at that place of prophetic significance for God's salvation at the end of times and the dawn of a new. Something about, to put it crudely, being first in the queue when God acts to save. And we know from the stories of the Gospels that amongst the followers of Jesus at this time, there was definitely a sense of wanting to be first in the queue if God is going to save his people through the words, the actions of Jesus. Think of those stories of dispute amongst the disciples about who is greatest. To go up the Mount of Olives is to put yourself at the front of the queue in the prime position to see what God is going to do next. But what strikes me, as I hear it afresh this year, this Palm Sunday, about Luke's telling of the story, and only Luke tells it in this way, and it's a small detail, but I think a significant one, that Luke frames the story of Jesus riding the donkey as a story down from the Mount of Olives. A journey away from that place of elevated perspective, of being in the prime position to anticipate what God is going to do when God comes in victory, to be first in the queue. But no, they're on their way down, back to to Jerusalem, back to that contested place, that place where peace always seems far away, back to the ordinariness of life with all its complexities and with all its challenges. And Luke tells us, as they make that journey down the Mount of Olives, if you like, in the reverse direction from the one they might have chosen, the disciples sing their songs. They sing, of course, a very ancient song, a very ancient pilgrim song from the Psalms. There's nothing new about it, but it does seem to me from the story that because it's being sung on the way down the mountain and not on the way up, these are no mere pious ditties, but they are songs of protest. To sing of the peace of God as you travel into a city that is far from at peace, that is a song of protest. To sing hymns of hope in a world where wherever you look seems to be heading in a direction of despair, that is a song of protest. And the songs of the disciples are heard as such, of course, by the Pharisees, who order Jesus to tell his disciples to be quiet. Though, of course, they cannot and they will not. And so as I hear the Palm Sunday story afresh this year, I would like us to reflect on what it means to enter Holy Week, unpacking what it means for this to be a Holy Week, not on the way up the special mountain, the place where we have an advantageous viewpoint on God's salvation, but on the way down, back into the contested place where the realities of the world bite and hit. What does it mean to sing our songs, not as a journey away from the world and its challenge and its lack of peace and its lack of concord, not as a way of encouraging one another in pious exclusion, but on the way down and in and towards that road that leads ultimately, of course, for Jesus to the cross. What does it mean as we enter our Holy Week to sing our psalms on the way down the Mount of Olives?